She mistook a billionaire heir for the waiter serving champagne. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The soft hum of conversation and the gentle clinking of silverware filled the grand ballroom of the Langham Hotel in New York City. Golden chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished tables, where guests in evening gowns and tuxedos laughed politely and raised crystal glasses of champagne. The air shimmered with money, manners, and the faint scent of roses. But Ella Tran did not belong here. She stood near the tall window, clutching a serving tray with trembling hands. The dress she wore was borrowed, the shoes pinched her toes, and the pearl earrings were fake but convincing. She had been asked to help serve at tonight's charity gala by her boss from the PR agency, a last-minute chance to network, she told herself. Maybe she could hand out her business cards. Maybe someone important would notice her sketches. Her reflection in the glass told a different story. Tired eyes, hair pinned in place with more hope than hairspray. She took a deep breath and whispered under her breath, "Smile, Ella, just smile." Across the room, a tall man in a black suit stood beside the champagne tower, holding a silver tray with the easy confidence of someone who did not need to. His tie was slightly undone, his sleeves rolled up. To Ella, he looked like another part-time waiter drafted for the night. She hurried over, balancing her tray. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice trembling a little. "Could you take these empty glasses? I need to grab the next round before the guests notice." The man turned his head, surprised. His eyes were clear, gray, calm, but amused. "Sure," he said after a pause, setting down his tray to help her. Their hands brushed for a second, his steady, hers ice-cold. "Thank you," Ella said, exhaling in relief. "People here treat waiters like furniture. You would think all that money would come with manners." He raised an eyebrow, hiding a smile. "You think so?" "Oh, I know so," she said, realizing too late she might sound rude. "I just mean, never mind. Sorry, I talk too much when I am nervous." He chuckled, a low, genuine sound. "Do not apologize. It is refreshing." Ella blinked, surprised by his warmth. Most people at events like this barely looked at staff, let alone spoke kindly. He seemed different, humble, even grounded. She could not have known that the man she was speaking to was Adrian Cole, heir to Cole Industries, the very family hosting the event. Before she could say more, her boss called from across the room. "Ella, move faster, please." She nodded quickly. "Back to reality," she muttered, lifting the tray again. "Thanks again for helping." "You are welcome," Adrian said. His voice followed her as she disappeared into the crowd. For a moment, he just stood there, watching her weave through the glittering guests with quiet grace. No one had spoken to him that honestly in years. No one had mistaken him for a waiter before, either. But something about her voice, nervous, sincere, a little defiant, lingered in his mind. He picked up an empty glass, studying his reflection in it, and whispered to himself, "Maybe tonight will not be as boring as I thought." Across the ballroom, Ella tried to shake off the encounter. She had work to finish and a subway to catch home before midnight. But even as she smiled politely at guests, a thought kept returning, uninvited and persistent. Who was that man with the gray eyes and the quiet laugh? Neither of them knew it yet, but that small mistake, her assuming he was a waiter, was about to change both of their lives forever. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the narrow blinds of Ella's small apartment in Queens. The alarm buzzed on her nightstand, its sound harsh against the quiet room. She reached out, silenced it, and lay still for a few seconds, staring at the cracked ceiling. Her feet ached from standing in heels all night, and the faint scent of champagne still lingered on her borrowed dress that now hung over the chair. Ella sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. Another day, another hustle. She had promised herself that she would not cry over exhaustion anymore. There was no time for that. Her rent was overdue, the agency had delayed salaries again, and her electricity bill sat unpaid on the table. A single sketchbook lay open beside it, the page filled with pencil drawings of gowns and silhouettes, her dream collection that she might never afford to make. She brewed the last scoop of coffee grounds and sipped the thin liquid, watching the neighborhood outside come alive, buses groaning, horns blaring, children shouting before school. She checked her phone. No new messages. Her best friend Maya had texted late last night. "Did you survive the gala? Any rich sponsors fall in love with your designs?" Ella had laughed bitterly before falling asleep. Sponsors did not fall in love with unpaid interns who spilled wine on their own shoes. She packed her sketchbook, notebook, and a sandwich wrapped in foil. The subway ride downtown felt endless. Ads flashed by promising dream careers, affordable loans, and the life you deserve. Ella smiled faintly. She knew dreams came with late fees. By the time she reached the small PR office on 42nd Street, her boss, Mr. Graham, was already pacing with his coffee cup. "Ella, the coal industry's account is priority today. They want a revised proposal by 5. I need mock-ups, visuals, and copy polished." "Understood?" "Yes, sir," she said quickly, setting her bag down. He barely looked at her. "And make sure the designs do not look cheap. We are dealing with billionaires here." "Oh." She swallowed the sting and nodded. As he walked away, she whispered, "Of course, because everything about me screams luxury." At her desk, she opened her laptop. The screen cracked in one corner. The image that appeared on her desktop background caught her eye, a sketch of a man in a black suit, holding a silver tray. The man from last night. She had drawn it from memory before falling asleep, unable to shake the thought of his eyes, gray, kind, amused. She brushed the thought aside and focused on work. By noon, her stomach grumbled. She ate half the sandwich and kept typing. When the clock hit 3, the office lights flickered. A storm was rolling in over Manhattan, dark clouds pressing low against the skyline. Around 4, Mr. Graham's voice carried across the office. "We have a meeting tomorrow morning with Coal Industries. Their new executive will be there. Big deal for us. Ella, you will prepare the visual boards." Her heart skipped. Coal Industries, the same name from the gala. She wondered if the man she met had anything to do with that company. Probably not, she told herself. What were the odds? The universe did not repeat accidents that perfectly. After work, she took the subway home through the rain. Her reflection in the train window looked older than 28, tired but stubborn. She opened her sketchbook and drew again. A gown flowing like liquid light, inspired by the chandelier from the ballroom. On the next page, she wrote in small, careful letters, "Keep going. You are closer than you think." Back at his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Adrian Cole stood in front of the window, hands in his pockets. The rain streaked the glass like silver threads. His assistant, Claire, entered quietly. "Sir? Your father confirmed the board meeting for tomorrow. The PR firm is sending over their junior representative to present the proposal." Adrian turned slightly, distracted. "Junior representative?" "Yes, someone named Ella Tran." He froze for a brief second before composing himself. "Thank you, Claire, that will be all." When she left, he smiled to himself, the image of the nervous young woman from the gala flashing in his mind. He had not planned to see her again, but maybe fate had other ideas. Meanwhile, in her tiny apartment, Ella placed her sketchbook beside her bed and whispered into the quiet, "Tomorrow has to be better." Oh, quote. Outside, thunder rolled across the city, as if New York itself knew that tomorrow's meeting would change everything. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of Coal Industries headquarters, turning the marble floors into mirrors of gold. The building rose 40 floors above Manhattan, sharp and gleaming, a place where people moved fast and spoke in polished tones. Ella clutched her portfolio as the elevator climbed, her reflection wavering in the mirrored walls. Her palms were damp, her stomach twisted with nerves. She had spent all night perfecting the presentation boards, double-checking every image and color swatch. This meeting was her chance to prove she was more than a nameless assistant. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into a quiet reception area. Everything felt too elegant, too still. The receptionist guided her to a waiting lounge with leather chairs and fresh flowers that probably cost more than her rent. She checked the time again. 8:47 in the morning. Her meeting started at 9 sharp. She rehearsed her lines silently, flipping through her sketches one more time. "Miss Tran?" a calm voice said. She looked up and froze. Adrian Cole stood at the doorway, dressed in a tailored navy suit, his tie perfectly knotted, his silver cufflinks catching the light. His expression was composed, but his eyes, those unmistakable gray eyes, softened with surprise. For a second, she could not breathe. The man she thought was a waiter at the gala was standing before her now, not holding a tray, but commanding a skyscraper. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but with a flicker of amusement. "We meet again." Her fingers tightened around her folder. "You work here?" He nodded lightly. "You could say that. I am Adrian Cole." The name hit her like a slow echo. "Cole," she repeated faintly. "As in Cole Industries?" "Yes," he said simply. "I am the interim chief executive officer." For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. The memory of her words from the gala. "People here treat waiters like furniture," rushed back to her. Her cheeks burned. "I am so sorry," she blurted. "I did not know who you were. I never meant—" He raised a hand gently, stopping her. "Do not apologize. I liked that you did not know. You spoke honestly." Ella blinked, unsure how to respond. He motioned toward the meeting room. "Shall we?" Inside, a few senior executives sat around a long glass table. Ella forced herself to focus, laying out her presentation boards. She spoke about brand storytelling, community engagement, and visual identity with a passion that surprised even her. She gestured toward the sketches she had drawn, bold, vibrant, inspired by the light and movement of New York City. When she finished, the room was quiet. Adrian leaned forward, his eyes scanning the artwork. "These are excellent," he said finally. "You have an instinct for authenticity." Her throat tightened. "Thank you, Mr. Cole." After the meeting, as the executives filed out, he stayed behind. "You did well today," he said. She nodded awkwardly. "Thank you. I was nervous." "I could tell," he said, smiling slightly. "But that is not always a bad thing. It means you care." She looked down at her sketchbook. "Care is easy. Making people notice is the hard part." "Oh," he hesitated, then asked, "May I see what else you have drawn?" She hesitated but opened her sketchbook, flipping to a page she had not planned to show anyone. It was a pencil drawing of the ballroom, the chandeliers, and a man in a black suit holding a champagne tray. Adrian looked at it quietly, something flickering in his eyes. "You drew this from memory?" "Yes," she said softly. It was the only thing that felt real that night. He touched the edge of the page gently. "May I keep this one?" Her heart jumped. "It is just a sketch." "Maybe," he said, "but it means something." He slipped the page carefully from the book, folding it once and sliding it into his jacket pocket. For the first time, Ella saw him not as a billionaire but as a man a little lonely, a little curious, and far more human than she expected. She smiled faintly. "So, does this mean I will not get fired for mistaking you for a waiter?" He laughed, a warm and genuine sound that echoed through the sleek room. "On the contrary. I think that mistake might be the best thing that has happened to either of us this week." When Ella stepped outside the building, the city looked different. The clouds had lifted, and sunlight spilled across the streets. She exhaled slowly, the weight of embarrassment replaced by something lighter, something like possibility. High above, in his office, Adrian unfolded the sketch again, studying the faint pencil lines. He smiled to himself and whispered, "The girl with the champagne tray." He did not know why, but he kept the drawing close, tucked neatly inside his desk drawer, as if it were the beginning of something worth remembering. A few days later, Ella was at her desk in the small PR office when her phone buzzed. The screen showed an unknown number. She hesitated for a second before answering. "Hello, this is Ella Tran speaking." "Miss Tran," a familiar voice replied, smooth and calm. "This is Adrian Cole." Her hand froze. "Oh, good morning, Mr. Cole. I wanted to thank you again for the presentation. Your ideas left an impression on me," he said. "Would you have time for coffee this afternoon? I would like to discuss a potential collaboration between your firm and Cole Industries." For a moment, she could not speak. The thought of seeing him again made her pulse quicken, but professionalism steadied her voice. "Yes, of course. I would be honored." They met at a small cafe downtown, far from the sleek glass towers. The place smelled of roasted beans and old wood, filled with quiet conversations and soft jazz. Adrian arrived without his usual entourage or driver. He carried his own umbrella, his hair slightly damp from the rain. "Thank you for meeting me here," he said as he sat down. "I wanted a place where we could talk without boardrooms or titles getting in the way." "That is fine by me," Ella said with a shy smile. "I like it better when people talk like people." He smiled back. "So do I." They ordered coffee. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adrian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You said something during the presentation that stuck with me. You talked about authenticity, about how people connect with brands that feel human. Do you really believe that?" "I do," she said softly. "I think people are tired of perfection. They want to see kindness, flaws, real effort. That is what makes something worth trusting." Adrian studied her face carefully. "You are not what I expected. Neither are you," she said before she could stop herself. "Most billionaires do not offer to help carry trays." He laughed, and the sound made her heart lift a little. "Touché. Maybe we both surprised each other." "Oh." The conversation flowed easily after that. They talked about New York traffic, childhood memories, and their favorite street food spots. Adrian listened more than he spoke, and when he did, his words carried quiet sincerity. Ella found herself forgetting that he was a man whose name appeared on skyscrapers. As they stood to leave, he said, "Miss Tran, may I see your studio sometime? You mentioned wanting to design clothes. I would like to see your work." Her eyes widened. "It is not really a studio, more like a corner of my apartment, and it is messy." "Then it sounds real," he said gently. "I prefer real." That evening, she tidied her tiny living room until every scrap of fabric was folded and every sketch pinned neatly to the wall. When Adrian arrived, he looked around the cramped space as if it were a gallery. "These are incredible," he said quietly, touching one of her designs pinned beside the window. "You see movement in fabric the way some people see emotion in faces." Ella blushed. "They're just dreams on paper." "Dreams are where everything starts," he replied. For the next hour, they talked and laughed as the city lights flickered outside her window. He told her about his late mother, an artist who never sold her work because she believed beauty was meant to be shared, not owned. She told him about her father, a tailor who used to hum while he sewed until the day he lost his shop. When he finally stood to leave, he turned to her and said, "Ella, I hope this is not the last time we talk outside of business." Her chest tightened, caught between logic and feeling. "Neither do I," she said softly. As the door closed behind him, Ella leaned against it, heart racing. She knew it was foolish to imagine anything more than friendship. He was Adrian Cole, the billionaire heir. She was a struggling designer living paycheck to paycheck. But for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, some mistakes were meant to happen. Over the next several weeks, Ella and Adrian saw each other more often. At first, every meeting was framed as business revisions to the campaign, new ideas, charity partnerships, but the conversations always drifted somewhere warmer. Sometimes he would call just to ask how her designs were going, and sometimes she would stop by his office with coffee because everyone needs a break from spreadsheets. One Friday evening, Adrian invited her to visit a community arts center his company funded in Brooklyn. The place was filled with children painting on long rolls of paper, volunteers arranging supplies, and walls splashed with color. He walked beside her quietly, hands in his pockets. "My mother helped start this program," he said. "She wanted to give kids a place to dream." Ella looked around, smiling at the chaos of paint and laughter. "Then she would be proud. This is beautiful." He turned to her. "You remind me of her in some ways." She believed art was not about wealth. It was about connection. The words made her chest tighten. For a moment, she saw him not as a billionaire but as a man who carried pieces of his mother's kindness. Later that night, he drove her home. Rain fell lightly against the windshield, blurring the city lights. They stopped in front of her building, and she hesitated before speaking. "You do not have to keep being this generous, Adrian. I know you have more important people to spend time with." He looked at her seriously. "Do you really think that? That kindness has a hierarchy?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. He smiled softly. "Ella, I do not spend time with you because of obligation. I do it because it feels real. The warmth in his voice stayed with her long after he drove away. A few days later, she invited him to her friend Maya's small birthday dinner in a quiet restaurant. It was simple candles, laughter, and the smell of homemade pasta. Adrian fit in surprisingly well, helping pass plates and telling funny stories from college. Maya caught Ella's eye and mouthed silently, "Who is this man?" When they left, Adrian offered his coat against the chilly wind. She shook her head, but he placed it gently over her shoulders anyway. "You do not have to be strong all the time," he said. The city lights shimmered off the puddles, and for a brief moment, it felt like they were the only two people in the world. In the following weeks, the friendship between them deepened into something unspoken but undeniable. He would stop by her office with small surprises, a sketchbook made of handmade paper, a box of her favorite pastries, a note that read, "Keep drawing." Yet beneath the warmth, a quiet fear began to grow inside her. Ella knew their worlds were not the same. She had seen the headlines, the pressure, the gossip surrounding his family name. She knew how people looked at her when she stood beside him, curious, judging, waiting for the story to end badly. One evening, as she stood by her window watching snow begin to fall over the city, she whispered to herself, "Do not fall for him. He lives in a world made of glass, and you will only see your reflection break." But when her phone lit up with his name and a simple message, "Look outside, I am downstairs with coffee," she smiled despite herself. Down on the street, Adrian stood in the cold, holding 2 cups and that same patient grin. Ella laughed softly, grabbed her coat, and ran down to meet him. Maybe she was stepping into something fragile. Maybe she was risking everything. But in that moment, with the snow swirling around them and his gray eyes catching the light, it did not feel like a mistake at all. The following month arrived with the chill of December and the glitter of holiday lights across Manhattan. For Ella, everything felt like a dream she did not want to wake from. Her designs were finally being noticed, and Cole Industries had agreed to sponsor her first small exhibition at a local gallery. Adrian had insisted on handling the details quietly, claiming he simply wanted to support emerging artists. On the evening of the opening, Ella stood inside the gallery surrounded by her sketches, fabrics, and soft music. The air smelled faintly of roses and paint. Her friends from the PR office came to cheer her on, and she smiled as cameras flashed. But when the host stepped onto the stage to welcome the special guest of honor, the room shifted. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome Adrian Cole, Chief Executive Officer of Cole Industries, and the primary patron of tonight's event." The applause thundered. Ella froze where she stood, her smile fading. She looked toward the entrance and saw him walking through the crowd in his black suit, confident and calm. Every eye turned toward him, and then toward her. A murmur rippled across the room, whispers of surprise, curiosity, and judgment. Her chest tightened. She had never wanted attention, least of all this kind. The words she had once spoken at the gala "people here treat waiters like furniture" echoed in her mind, cruel and haunting. Adrian reached her side and smiled warmly. "Congratulations, Ella. You did it." She forced a small smile. "You should have told me you were coming." "I wanted to surprise you," he said simply. "You deserve to be celebrated." But the crowd was already closing in. A reporter pushed forward, microphone raised. "Miss Tran, how does it feel to be the muse of one of New York's most eligible billionaires?" Laughter followed, thin and sharp. Cameras flashed again. Ella's voice trembled. "Please, I am just an artist." The reporter pressed on. "Is it true you met while you were working as a server at a charity gala?" Her face burned. Before she could respond, Adrian stepped forward, his voice firm. "That is enough. Tonight is about her work, not about rumors." The crowd quieted, but the damage was done. Whispers spread like smoke. She could feel their judgment, a poor girl with a rich man's favor. As the event wound down, she slipped outside into the cold. Snow was falling lightly, melting against her cheeks. Adrian followed her, his expression full of concern. "Ella, wait," he said. "Do not let them ruin this night. You were incredible." She turned to him, her voice breaking. "You do not understand, Adrian. I have worked my whole life to be seen for what I create, not for who stands beside me." And now, that is all they see. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. I never asked for your money or your name. I just wanted something honest. You have that, he said quietly. Everything I have done, I did because I believe in you. Tears stung her eyes. Then why did you have to do it like this, in front of everyone? He did not answer right away. The silence stretched between them, filled with falling snow and regret. Finally, she whispered, I need time to think. She turned and walked away, her footsteps fading into the white street. Adrian watched her go, the snow gathering on his shoulders. Inside his jacket pocket, the folded sketch she had given him months ago felt heavier than ever. It was the first thing she had ever drawn for him, and tonight, it suddenly looked like the last. The days after the gallery event felt endless. The newspapers twisted the story, printing headlines like, Billionaire Heir falls for struggling artist, and From waitress to muse, Ella Tran's meteoric rise. Strangers online called her lucky. Others called her a gold digger. Ella stopped checking her phone altogether. She returned to her office, hoping work would help her forget, but whispers followed her there too. Colleagues exchanged glances when she walked by. Her boss, Mr. Graham, called her into his office and sighed heavily. Ella, the attention around you is not good for our firm. The coal account is on hold until the gossip dies down. Maybe you should take some time off. She left without arguing. That evening, she sat in her apartment surrounded by unfinished sketches and unopened mail. Her heart felt heavy, like every dream she had was now tangled in someone else's shadow. She missed Adrian, but she could not bear the noise that came with his world. Across the city, Adrian sat in his office long after midnight. The skyline stretched before him, glittering but cold. His assistant, Claire, entered quietly. You have been avoiding calls from the board. They are not happy about the media attention. I know, he said quietly. They think she is a distraction. Oh, Adrian's eyes hardened. She is not a distraction. She is the reason I have not lost faith in what this company stands for. Claire hesitated. Then maybe you should tell her that, before someone else writes her story for her. He looked out the window, lost in thought. The next morning, Ella received a letter slid under her door. It was simple, written in his handwriting. You once said you wanted to be seen for your work. Let me show the world what I see. No reporters, no investors, no audience. Just your art. If you can trust me one last time, come to the address below tonight at 7. The address led to an old building downtown, the one where she used to take art classes before she ran out of money. The door was unlocked. Inside, the lights were low, and the smell of fresh paint filled the air. Her breath caught. Every wall was lined with her sketches, the ones from her notebooks, her old portfolio, even drawings she thought she had lost. Each piece was framed carefully, the title card beneath every one, reading, The Art of Ella Tran. Adrian stood at the center of the room. No reporters, no cameras, just him. This is what you deserve, he said quietly. Not a headline, a home for your art. Tears welled in her eyes. How did you even find all of these? He smiled faintly. You leave pieces of yourself everywhere you go. I just gathered them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he added, You do not have to forgive me, Ella. I only wanted to remind you that your art speaks louder than any rumor. Her voice trembled. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you, he said simply. Even if you never believe in me again. She stood there, torn between gratitude and heartbreak, surrounded by everything she had ever created, and the man who had refused to let her disappear. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. Adrian, I do not know what this means yet, but thank you. He nodded once, accepting her distance, and whispered, That is enough for me. As she walked out into the cold night, snowflakes brushed her cheeks like the touch of forgiveness she was not yet ready to name. The following week, Ella's exhibition quietly opened to the public. There was no press, no red carpet, and no corporate banners. Just word of mouth and a handwritten sign on the glass door that read, The Art of Ella Tran. To her surprise, people came not for the story, but for the work itself. Strangers paused before each sketch, murmuring softly about the warmth and emotion in her lines. Some even asked to buy prints. For the first time, she felt seen for who she truly was. When she stepped outside that evening, she found Adrian waiting near the entrance. He stood alone, No driver, no photographers, just his familiar calm presence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city buzzed softly around them, taxis, laughter, music from a nearby cafe. "You came," she said quietly. "I promised I would," he replied. "I wanted to see you on your own stage." She smiled faintly. "It is not much of a stage. It is honest," he said, "and it is yours." They began walking down the quiet street, their steps matching naturally. The winter air was crisp, carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts from a street cart. Ella pulled her coat tighter. "Do you ever miss being anonymous?" she asked after a while. He looked up at the skyline, thoughtful. "Every day. That is why the night I met you mattered so much. You saw me before the headlines did." His words made her chest ache. "I thought I ruined your reputation." He shook his head. "Reputation fades. What stays is truth. And the truth is, I was the one who made the mistake by turning something real into something public." They stopped near the edge of the park. The fountain in the center had frozen into crystal layers, glimmering under the streetlights. Ella looked at him, her breath visible in the cold air. "You did not have to do all this, Adrian. The exhibit, the gallery, the letters. You could have walked away." "I tried," he said softly. "But every time I did, I heard your voice. You once told me that people connect to kindness and imperfection. You taught me that lesson, Ella. I could not forget it." "Oh," she turned away for a moment, blinking back the sting in her eyes. "You make everything sound simple." "It is simple," he said, stepping closer. "I care about you, not because of what you create or what people think, but because of who you are when the lights are off." Her heartbeat quickened. For a long second, she did not answer. The snow began to fall again, slow and silent. She finally whispered, "I do not know where this goes from here." "Neither do I," he admitted. "But maybe that is the beauty of it." He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded the same sketch she had drawn months ago, the one of the ballroom, the tray, and the man with gray eyes. Time had creased the paper, but the lines were still soft and full of life. "I kept this," he said. "It reminds me of the night everything changed." Ella looked down at the sketch, then back at him. That night was supposed to be a mistake. He smiled gently. "Maybe it was the best mistake we ever made." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she stepped forward, her hand brushing against his. It was not a confession or a promise, just a beginning, quiet, tentative, and real. The wind carried the sound of distant laughter, and for the first time in months, Ella allowed herself to laugh too. The bitterness of gossip and heartbreak faded, replaced by something softer hope. Under the falling snow, they kept walking, side by side, toward whatever waited beyond the next corner. Spring arrived quietly in New York City. The snow melted from the sidewalks, the trees bloomed along Central Park, and the air carried the faint scent of rain and new beginnings. For Ella, life had settled into something peaceful and steady. Her art exhibit had grown in popularity, and a local magazine had written an article praising her for redefining sincerity in modern design. She smiled when she read that line. Sincerity, it was all she had ever wanted people to see. One afternoon, she stood inside the same gallery where it had all begun, rearranging a few sketches for a new show. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, painting warm patterns across the floor. She did not hear the door open until a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Still chasing perfection?" She turned, surprised but smiling. Adrian stood there, casual in a gray sweater instead of a suit, holding a bouquet of white tulips. "I thought you were in London," she said. "I was," he replied, stepping closer. "But then I realized there was something more important waiting here." He handed her the flowers. She took them, her heart fluttering. "They are beautiful. They reminded me of you," he said softly. "Strong enough to grow through winter." For a moment they simply stood there, surrounded by her art and the hum of the city outside. Then Adrian reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Ella," he said, his voice steady but warm. "You once told me you did not believe in fairy tales. You said real love was built on honesty, not grand gestures. So here is my promise. No secrets, no surprises, no masks. Just two people who made a mistake and decided to make it mean something." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, elegant and timeless. Ella's eyes filled with tears. "Adrian," he smiled. "Will you marry me, Ella Tran?" Not because of who I am, but because of who we are together. She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. The answer came out as a whisper, trembling but certain. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she laughed through her tears, unable to stop smiling. The gallery seemed to glow brighter around them, every sketch and brushstroke turning into a witness of their journey. Months later, they were married in a small ceremony inside that very same gallery. The guests were few friends, family, and the children from the Brooklyn Art Center, now dressed in their best clothes. Instead of champagne towers and flashing cameras, there were handmade flowers, soft music, and laughter that felt genuine. When the vows were spoken, Adrian turned to her and said quietly, "I once told you that your art speaks louder than rumors. But you were wrong about one thing, Ella. You did not just change how I see the world, you changed how I live in it." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And you taught me that mistakes are just detours to the right place." As the evening light filtered through the windows, they danced beneath her paintings, surrounded by color, warmth, and everything they had fought for. The sketch that had started it all, the one of the man holding a tray, and the girl who mistook him for a waiter now, hung framed at the center of the room. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "The best mistake we ever made." And in that moment, with his arms around her and the city glowing beyond the glass, Ella knew their story had come full circle, not as a fairy tale, but as something far better. A love that was honest, imperfect, and true.